everyone, welcome back to another video from A Man Talks NRL SuperCoach. Today we're just going to go through a quicker video as I just talk through my team, my reserve selections, my captaincy, and also who I'm intending to trade out this week. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm recording this on a Thursday evening and I still have no idea who my trades are going to be. It's heavily dependent on what team list I think we get from the West Tigers though. So just a quick look at my team. So Jaden Bradley, Connor Watson are my hookers. Haven't got the reserve on Watson at the moment. Front row forward of Tavita Pangai Jr., Christian Welch and Takiaho, who I do have the reserve on. I easily could flip to Connor Watson, just haven't made that decision yet. Second row forward, Tohu Harris, Mitch Barnett and Josh Curran. On the bench currently, Dave Fafita, Ryan James and Ben Trbojevic. In halves, I've got Nathan Cleary, Sam Walker, who I've got the reserve on Sam Walker, Captain Cleary. Jerome Luai, Josh Schuster and 5'8" with the reserve on Josh Schuster as well. In the centres, Brian To'o, Dave Nofaluma, Dane Laurie, and Bailey Simonson, who's coming up against the Bulldogs, so I think there's potentially some attacking points for him there. And the reserves, I've got, the non-playing reserves, I've got Capel, Staines, and Fusatua. And at fullback, I've got James Tedesco as vice-captain and reserve on Clint Gutherson. So that's how my team's looking at the moment. It's not too bad shape. I think I could actually run out with that 17 and not make any trades this week. But obviously, big issues here for me are Dave Fafita, Schuster, who's a bit of a concern as well in terms of that he's peaked in price, and Kurt Capel too, and probably a lack of Tom Trbojevic as well, but we'll probably not be able to fix that issue this week given the other things I want to do with my team. So I think the main thing here for me is I was really waiting on the West Tigers final team sheet tomorrow evening, because what I really want to see is if Adam Doueihi is actually still named in the centres or if he's playing at 5'8". Basically, that's going to change how I trade this week. If Doueihi's named at 5'8", I'm really keen on him. He's around 13 playing 5'8", put up some good stats. I mentioned in my trade thoughts video that the draw for the Tigers is pretty tough from round 13 onwards. But I thought about it a little bit more and I thought, well, you know what, you're going to be buying him for the next few weeks to play that round 13, and you're going to have other guys like Cody Walker, Sean Johnson going to have really, really good draws at that point in time. I don't think it's too bad of a decision to just flip Doueihi to one of those two, if I feel that's the right thing to do. I can capitalize on Doueihi's good draw coming up and then, make the switch. It is an extra trade instead of, say, going directly to those guys, but you want that number for round 13. So if Doueihi's named at 5'8", I'll likely be doing Josh Schuster to Adam Doueihi. And if I do that move, that'll leave me with 74.6k in the bank, and really happy with those 5'8s of Jerome Luai and Adam Doueihi. And so that would be my first trade if Adam Doueihi is named at 5'8". If that's not the case, I'll probably just not go for Adam Doueihi given the uncertainty of him playing at centre wing, and I'll just keep Josh Schuster in my 5'8". Going against the Broncos, don't think that's a horrible matchup. Yes, his break even is pretty high at 83, but I think even if he scores around a 60 to 70, hopefully, he won't drop too much in value, so I don't think it's too bad of a decision just to hold him for this week. But likely I'm not going for Tyson Gamble this week. Reason being, I think I'm pretty happy with how my team's looking. I don't really think I need to be looking for money that much. I've got decent cash cows in the team so far, and I think Schuster to Gamble, Gamble being the second 5'8", I don't quite think he's that gun, and I really like having two good scoring players at 5'8". So that's one of the reasons why I'm probably not going to go for Gamble. If I keep Schuster, that's great. If I don't, I'd probably likely want to go for like a Doueihi or, a second gun 5'8". So that's the reasoning behind why I wouldn't go for Gamble this week. In terms of other trades that I'm thinking about doing, if I don't do that trade of Schuster to Doueihi, that gives me two different options as well. Dave Fafita is an obvious sell, and I guess the key question is, do I bring in like an Isaiah Papali'i for him or a Ryan Madison? So trading out Dave Fafita, there's literally $1 million available cash to me, so I could easily afford like an Isaiah Papali'i or a Ryan Madison as well. I spoke quite in depth about the two and whether, which one is probably going to be the better proposition for yourself. For me, some could say like Isaiah Papali'i, you're paying overs for him at 780k. To be honest, the way I see it is that if I'm trading out like Dave Fafita, I want to bring in someone who's probably the most similar to him in terms of delivering the points. Isaiah Papali'i has shown that to this point. Yes, there's still some doubts about, now the Eels have probably got a full forward pack and whether that eats into his minutes, but even when his minutes were like 60 to 65, he was averaging a base and power of still around 65, 70 or even up to 75, which is still a keeper score. And if you throw on some attacking stats, obviously he's going to get up into that 100 range. So I really, really like him, and I think it's about time that I pull the trigger on him. He is very expensive, but I've got the cash able to do it. If you weren't wanting to go for Papali'i instead of going for like a Madison to save that 200k, I think Madison is great value as well, and he's obviously a lot less owned, so that does work in his favor, although I expect that ownership to go up quite a bit this week. But I think I'm probably going to go for Papali'i. So then I'd have 218k in the bank from doing that Dave Fafita to Isaiah Papali'i trade, and I think I'm pretty set on doing that. So I definitely think that's going to be one of my moves this week, is bringing in Papali'i. So if I do that trade, I've got 218k in the bank to play with, and there's a few different options that I could take. If I look at my team, I think, as I mentioned, the candidates to sell would probably be like a Kurt Capewell, who's not playing this week, probably going to play Origin, so he's going to miss that round 13 bye week, even though the Panthers play. So he's definitely looking like a bit of a sell in my team. Schuster could be a sell, but I think he's okay to hold. And I don't think if I don't want to go for Gamble, and Dewey's not really a good option this week playing at centre wing, I don't think there's any other good 5'8" options, because I've already got Luai, and I think he's the one that a lot of people probably wanting to bring in. So I think I'm probably just going to hold Schuster then for that decent game against the Broncos, and maybe we can reassess at that point in time, potentially using Connor Watson to flip Schuster to like a good hooker, maybe like a Reed Marnie in a few weeks. So for me, Kurt Capewell is probably the most likely person I'd trade out. I've actually got the money in the bank and the dual players to do a direct Kurt Capewell to Ryan Madison trade as well, if I swap down Ben Trbojevic into my centre wing. So I'll be able to sub down Ben Trbojevic for Kurt Capewell, and that would allow me to have 685k in the bank. And at that point, I could afford a Ryan Madison who's at a good price of 579k, and so proving to be very good value for what we know that he can output in terms of his points. So I could do that move, and I'd have 105k in the bank still, and get both Papali'i and Madison in this week, which are really good moves. I'm getting rid of Fafita, who's going to miss a few games, Capewell, who's going to miss a couple of games, getting in two guys who are playing in round 13. Madison, there has been some talk potentially he's on the fringe of Origin selection, but I've got a feeling that he'll probably miss out given the forward stocks that the New South Wales Blues have. So I think he's a relatively safe buy, and looking at that, if I confirmed those trades, I'd have a second row forward of Papali'i, Tohu Harris, Mitch Barnett, Ryan Madison, Josh Curran, and Ryan James. So a lot of good second row forward depth there. The only issue with doing that Kurt Capewell to Ryan Madison switch is that it leaves my centre wing in a pretty bad state that I'm not too happy with. Like To'o, Nofaluma, and Laurie are obviously okay, but it means that every week I'm going to have to be choosing out of Simonson, Staines, and Fusitu'a is not even playing, so really out of Simonson and Staines, and I just don't trust him enough to be a good fourth centre wing player. So that is one issue with doing that Kurt Capewell to Ryan Madison. It leaves my centre wing really exposed, and like really kind of top heavy. It's like I'd have good decent front row forwards, good second row forward depth, but really my centre wings would be lacking. So I'm not looking to really actually do this Kurt Capewell to Ryan Madison switch. Instead, what I am kind of leaning on doing instead is doing a Kurt Capewell to another centre wing trade, just to kind of bolster that position up by taking out Kurt Capewell. And my thinking is that, well, Madison's break even is around 60, and if he scores around 65 to 70, he'll go up a little bit in price, but his value is relatively going to stay the same. And instead, what I can do next week is I can do a Christian Welch to a Ryan Madison trade, assuming that both their values don't change too much. I might have to spend an extra 30k maybe, but I think Welch is a fine play for this week. But Welch has to go sometime soon, because I think he will play State of Origin. So in my opinion then, if I can do a Christian Welch to Ryan Madison by swapping Papali'i up to my front row forward next week, and hopefully just doing that single trade and saving another trade next week, that'll be the way I'll get Ryan Madison in without having to really sacrifice my centre wing for this week. So in terms of the centre wing replacements, there's a few options. I've spoken quite a lot in depth about guys who will play in round 13 who've got decent draws, like a Bradman Best, a Jack Bird's and also an option. Just looking at the list here in terms of the best averaging ones, Corey Thompson's injured, but you got like a Jermaine Asako, Jordan Rapana, but he's also out for 1 to 2 weeks. A Matt Ikuvalu, who's quite an interesting prospect. Peachy, even Ferguson, Blake Ferguson or Mike Acevo if I want to go for more Eels guys. So there's definitely quite a few options I can go for in the centre wing, trading out Kurt Capewell. So the guy I'm actually leaning towards is, the way that I'm looking at my trades is I've brought in quite a few round 13 guys already. Like if I just have a quick look at my team, this is also assuming that Jerome Luai and Brian To'o don't play Origin. I'd have Jaden Brayley, Connor Watson, Tavita Pangai Jr., Spencer Linu, Mitch Barnett, Isaiah Papali'i, Ryan Madison if I get him in, so that's already 7, I can't count. Jerome Luai, that's 8. Brian To'o 9, David Nofaluma 10, Dane Laurie 11, Staines 12 if I want to plug Staines in there as well, and hopefully Gutherson, that would be 13. So that's also big claims, assuming that Jerome Luai and Brian To'o won't make Origin, but for now, assuming how it is, that's 13 guys I've already got for round 13, which I think is a pretty decent number. So I'm starting to think I don't have to really prioritize so hard. I think at least maybe for getting the centre wing around 13 playing guys. So I'm looking just to maybe get who's a guy with a good draw coming up, who might be presenting some good value. Someone I probably should have spoken about in my trade targets video, but Matt Ikuvalu is one person I'm really looking at this week. His 497k. We saw even last week against a tough opponent in the Eels, he scored a hat trick and scored a massive 111 points. His base stats are actually pretty decent as well. I think he's averaging around the high 20s, and the thing is, I think the key question is if he can be Brett Morris 2.0. We saw Brett Morris has been, so productive playing on the right wing, and obviously I'd rate him as a better finisher than Ikuvalu, but Ikuvalu has shown to be a very good finisher as well. And I really like the way that wingers are playing. They do a lot of the base stats and they finish off a lot of the sweep plays. Just looking at that list as well of the highest averaging center wings, a lot of these guys are actually like wingers and not necessarily even like the centers or their fullbacks. Brett Morris, winger, Toto, winger, Thompson, winger, Osako, fullback, Rapana, winger, Ikuvalu, winger, Adokar, winger, Jesse Arthur's a center, but he's only played 2 games. Momrovsky's a center, but he's playing in a really good Penrith team. Peachy's not even playing in the backs, he's playing as a lock. Holmes, is a fullback, Garrick a winger, Ferguson winger, Nofaluma a winger, Sivo winger. You get the story. There's a lot of wingers who are averaging really well. So for that reason, I'm thinking maybe a Tupou as well, but he probably is more likely to play Origin. So that's definitely the way I'm leaning towards, is doing firstly that Dave Fifita to Isaiah Papali'i trade. Won't bring Madison in this week, but I'll use Christian Welch as a way to get him in next week, hopefully, barring any big injury concerns. And then bring in a center this week for Kurt Capel. And I haven't decided yet who that is, but I really like Ikuvalu for that pod factor as well. He's 0.2% owned. Obviously, I expect that to be a little bit more this week too, but I really don't think, given that he's not playing round 13, he might not be as highly considered as some other people. So I really like that. And playing in the Roosters team, they've got really nice games coming up against the Cowboys, the Broncos, and then the Raiders. They do buy in round 13, obviously not ideal. And the games, I think 14 they play the Titans, so that's a decent game. 15-16 though is pretty tough against the Panthers and the Storm. But I know in round 17 the Roosters play the Bulldogs, so that's a pretty good game. So I think I'd probably just have to cop some lower scores from the Panthers and the Storm in rounds 15-16. But I think he can do a decent job. So I think he'll go up in value. So I'm really thinking about maybe doing this trade this week. So that's definitely one way I'm leaning, is going for like say an Ikuvalu, and that trade would leave me with 188k in the bank. So probably like definitely enough money to do like a Welch to Madison trade next week. And then if I want to create more cash later on, I can maybe look to downgrade like a Connor Watson after the round 13 bye week, or use that money to upgrade him to like a Reed Marnie. So there's options. Sean Bloor, who's coming back in the scene, he can be a decent cash go option. So I could create money if I want to go downgrade like a Ryan James or a Staines or someone to Sean Bloor. I think there'll be ways to make money, so I'm not as concerned about that. We want to be looking to get in the points at this stage, sitting decently ranked around 1600. So looking to really push more into the top 1000. But guys, that's my kind of trade plans, at least for this week, and what I'm thinking a little bit about for next week as well. So I think that Dave Fifita to Zay Papali'i trade in my head is basically locked in. I just haven't pressed the complete trade button yet, but I think that trade in my head is pretty locked in. And then I'm tossing up between, say, if Dewey's named at 5'8", I'll go Schuster to Dewey, and I'll just play Simonson this week. If Dewey's still named at centers, I'll hold Schuster, and I'll trade out Kurt Capel instead for another center wing. And then next week, look to do a Christian Welch to Ryan Madison trade. Well guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video and got some value out of this in terms of some additional thoughts on players I hadn't mentioned in my trade thoughts video. If you did, would really appreciate a thumbs up on the video, and do please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, as I'll continue to put out more videos on SuperCoach throughout the 2021 NRL season. Till then, see you guys in the next video.